And thank you very much for participating in the chat. I love the fact that there's so many people here across the globe and a lot of folks that are right here in my home city of Toronto. Today's presentation is called Still Body, Quiet Mouth, Clean Mechanics, Clean Clicker Training for Faster Results. I always open up all my presentations of note with a land acknowledgement. Although I am presenting virtually, I am located in Toronto, and as such, I'd like to acknowledge that the land that I'm virtually presenting from is on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississauga of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nation, Inuit, and Métis. And we also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississauga of the Credit. My name is Andre Yu, and I'm a Karen Pryor Academy certified training partner and a certified professional dog trainer. I'm also the founder of When Hounds Fly Dog Training, which I founded in 2010. And I'm a member of the Karen Pryor Academy faculty. And I mentioned already that I'm based in Toronto, Canada. You can follow me personally on social media. My handle is always at Andre_YEU. I do want to tell you a little bit about the company that I founded, When Hounds Fly. When Hounds Fly is Toronto's and possibly Canada's largest dog training school, with over 5 locations in Toronto and 1 in Vancouver. And we have the highest number of Karen Pryor certified trainers and certified professional dog trainers of any school in Canada. And 14,500 alumni are part of our community that we've built since 2010. And if you want to follow our dog training school, all our social media handles are under @WhenHoundsFly. So the crux of this presentation today is all about why does my dog tend to listen better to the trainer than to me? Now, if you want to learn the answer to that, there are a few ground rules for today's presentation. So I want to make sure that we're all on the same page and that we agree, coming together here, that we agree that using food to teach our dog behaviors makes sense and is logical. We should also agree that we want to be as motivating as possible to get our dogs to want to do things with us, as opposed to being intimidating. Related to that, we should agree that our dogs' feelings matter in the way we teach them. But also, I want everyone to be open-minded. So if I say anything that makes you go, to perhaps suspend any disbelief at first and continue to hear everything I have to say. Lastly, because this is just a 45, 50-minute presentation with some time for Q&A and training your dog, what is out of scope tonight is any behavior issues or behavior problems that have a strong fear, aggression, or anxiety component to it. So the overview for my presentation today, 5 things. The first is I want to go over table stakes. All the things we should take for granted as, yep, for sure, before we even ask the question, why does the dog listen better to them versus me? After that, I'm going to talk about and want to find out from you what the worst movie you've ever seen is. And for dogs, the worst movie they've ever seen is Bad Mechanics. Blah, 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 blah is item number 3, what behaviorally is referred to as learned irrelevance. Number 4, let's talk about the 5 senses of a dog. And this will inform what our cue types are going to look like. And then lastly, a little tale of green eggs and ham. All right, table stakes time. Let's make sure that these are none of the variables affecting your dog's training and their responsiveness to you versus the professional trainer or other people. So the very first thing is, let's just make sure our dogs are sufficiently motivated. The trainer and you are using the identical same food. So it's no fair if you go to a dog training school and the trainer listens, the dog listens better to the trainer, but they've brought some weird, obscure, like dehydrated fish or like freshly cooked steak, and you came with kibble or biscuits. That wouldn't be fair, and that obviously would explain why the dog was listening better. So are our dogs sufficiently motivated between the 2 trainers, you and the other person? Are you using the identical reinforcer? That's table stakes. How about excessive pressure? This can be very salient. So remember, when your dog meets me as a professional trainer at school, your dog met me 30 seconds ago, and our whole relationship is about the fact that I said good boy and gave them a cookie. So in their view, I am basically the cookie guy and nothing but. However, when you live with the dog 24/7 for months, years, and so on and so forth, there may be a history of excessive pressure in that relationship. So if you've ever used an angry tone with your dog, which you probably have, we're all humans, or you tend to use a lot of spatial pressure that is leaning forward into the dog to get them to rock back into a sit, or if you've ever used physical force, like sit, oh, you're not sitting, and I'm just going to push you down. These components of the way you communicate with your dog can cause them to feel a certain level of stress when you start asking for behaviors. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but when you're under pressure, a lot of times very basic things are very difficult to compute. For example, one of my colleagues, when I put her on the spot, I'm like, yeah, 7 times 8. Because she knows she's not really good at fast math, or I say, 20% of 100. Like, she absolutely chokes because we're in a meeting and everyone's watching, and I'm throwing math at her. She feels social pressure, and suddenly she just can't perform that behavior of, well, 20% of 100 is 20. So is there excessive pressure being used by you versus the trainer? That might explain things. And this also should inform that we should try not to use these sort of things to get our dog to do behavior, because it can affect their performance by causing stress. And let's also make sure discomfort is a component there. So if your dog has a sore back end or hips or spine, and you ask them to roll over in tricks class and they don't, well, that's an obvious explanation as to why they wouldn't do that. So medical issues should always be ruled out. And lastly, sometimes non-compliance is based on the fact that what you're asking them to do is just really uncomfortable. So imagine this. We're walking down the street, and Toronto is just like any other sort of major metropolitan street. We're walking down the street and there's an old sofa, and I'm like, oh, hey, you know what? Why don't you just sit down there and wait for me while I pop in to get a coffee? And that sofa basically has spray painted on it bed bugs. Well, you would definitely not comply with my sit cue. And that doesn't mean you're being a bad dog or a bad friend. But in fact, what I'm asking you to do is very uncomfortable. Yet we do this with dogs all the time. I feel a lot of pity for dogs that are sitting right now in Toronto because it's slushy and cold outside. And I don't want to put my bum on something disgusting and unpleasant, and neither should your dog. So once we've taken off the table stakes, it's time to think about the worst movie ever. All right. I am just really curious, and I love audience participation. So I want to know out there, what is the worst movie you have ever seen? Like one that was just so stupid, it just made you go, oh, terrible. What's the worst movie you've ever seen? Type it in the chat. I want to read out some movie titles. Elf with Will Ferrell. Yes, that is a terrible movie, 100%. Jurassic Park. I was younger when I saw it.
We're gonna have some fights in here. We're gonna start some wars in this chat. I see it happening.
Black Mask. I don't remember that one. I gotta Google it. Come on. Bad movies. Worst movies you've ever seen. I'm gonna share mine in a bit. Twilight. Never watched that one, but it seems cringy. Napoleon Dynamite. That's popular with a lot of people. Avatar. All right. Avatar was pretty not. It was overhyped, but it wasn't that bad. And that's why she says ducks. All right, any other bad movies? All right, I'm gonna write mine. It's recent. See, there's Carolina saying, I love Twilight. The worst movie that I've seen recently that I still watched to the end and I regret it and I feel a bit ashamed was Tomorrow War, which was on Amazon Prime. The actors were like A-list, and but it was terrible, man. And yes, the John Travolta alien movie, that's Battlefield Earth. That one often makes the top 10 lists. In fact, it was so badly reviewed, like as soon as it came out, I don't think anyone watched it. I think that only, no offense if anyone is, I think only Scientologists watched it because they had to. But anyways, back to the worst movie ever. Worst movies ever are often just very confusing to us. That's why they're so bad. And what do we do when we are trapped in the worst movies ever? Whether it's Battlefield Earth or The Gray or Avatar: Last Airbender movie was pretty bad. Well, if you're in a theater and you paid $20 to see this movie, you might walk out. It's like My time is worth more than the $20 that I paid for this thing. I'm out of here.
Hey,
If it's
Andre,
a,
right
uh-huh.
now your screen share is the Zoom background.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Boing. How are we looking now?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay. Confusing. We'll walk out of it. Hit the red X if it's Netflix. Avoid that director. Avoid the actor. This is what we do when we watch watch terrible movies. Justin and Kelly evidently was on the top 10 list too, and I vaguely remember it coming out, but I definitely didn't watch it. So let's think about our dogs in the worst movie ever. You know, our dogs, basically, when we're bad trainers, we're a bad movie. We're confusing. We make no sense. Maybe the pace is wrong. The acting's terrible, unclear, and dogs walk out of our training sessions. But in contrast, when we are clear with our dogs, we are compelling movies. And our dogs then focus on us better. And the four things that I want to talk about that make up a good component of a compelling dog movie in terms of a trainer is how's their cueing? Is it clear? And do our trainers, the humans, see when I, the dog, do the correct behavior? And do our trainers, in a very accurate manner, time their marker signal, which I'll get to in a minute, detailed wise? Do the trainers mark the dog in a way that is consistent and clear? And how do they reinforce me as the dog? Do they deliver the food or the toy or the reinforcer in a way that makes sense, like a good script? These are the components that make a trainer a good movie for a dog and keep us glued to the screen the entire time, or the dog's glued to the screen the entire time. All right, so it's at this point that I actually do want to ask a question. This is another question, and this time I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll. And the poll that should be popping up is, what is your familiarity with clicker or marker training? Do you know about it, use it? Have you heard about it, kind of know about it? Or it's like, what's clicker? Let's find out what the mix looks like today. So I got a lot about know about it, know, use about it. That's cool, that's great. And then we've got some heard, kind of know about it, and no, never heard of it. Okay, that's great. That informs what the level of the, you guys are all a bunch of enthusiasts. So now that I know, and I'm just going to share the results if you're curious. It should be on your screen. 26 of you said that you know about it and use it today. And 6 of you said, I heard about it, kind of know about it. So that's great. So I'll be very brief with my explanation of like why bother with the clicker. It's because when the dog does the desired behavior we're looking for, we may not be able to deliver the fish to the dolphin's mouth or the cookie to the dog's mouth fast enough for the connection to go between the behavior and the reinforcement. So the clicker allows us 3 to 5 seconds delay to deliver the reinforcer to the dog, but still connect as a bridge the dog's behavior with the consequence. So anyways, that's my very short elevator reminder of a clicker based on the level of skill and knowledge that we have here. So let's go through the first 3 parts of that great movie. I'm going to do cueing after. So yes, in the order of the 4, it's cue, but I want to start off with see, mark, and reinforce. So see first. Are you watching your dog closely and paying attention with the focus that the whack-a-mole player here is doing? Because whack-a-mole is a very important sport. So you don't actually wait till the whack-a-mole is fully out of the hole to whack it in the hammer. You should be watching all the moles and see the moment you see a vibration that the motor underneath the whack-a-mole is starting to trigger. And then in a split second after that, there'll be movement. And that's what triggers you to wham, hit that mole. So we are watching for the predictor of the behavior occurring, because it takes us some time to then mark accurately. And when we mark, whether it is yes or click, then we want to make sure that we hit it on time, accurate lens shutter button. But also, I want you to imagine what it'd be like if you were a photographer trying to take a shot, but instead of just holding the camera very still, holding your breath, and then hitting the button, you took the camera and flicked the camera while you clicked, like this, click, click. Well, that would produce a crazy fuzzy photo that made no sense. So holding your clicker and your body super still so that you just hit the lens shutter. That's what a good clicker mechanic looks like. And then lastly, reinforcement. Most people can't mess this up. You got to put a cookie in the dog's mouth or get it to them in a way that is efficient. But the one thing that I'll warn you there is, one, not making the food difficult to get, because that can be very, very frustrating. If you feed in a way that is inefficient for the dog to receive and it takes too much work, like, oh my God, it's way over there, that could affect motivation. Fumbling for it and being slow could also affect motivation. They may tune out. And then the other important part is I want to make sure that my food hand, my feeding hand, doesn't move until after I've clicked. So my reinforcement hand should be glued to a part of my body. I mark yes first, and then my food hand moves. So these are three mechanical components of clean, like clear communication for see, mark, and reinforce. So it is now time to do an audience participation game. So if you have of the 26 people that already clicker train, go grab a clicker. Your dog may get a little bit upset though, because we are going to click and not give them treats. But I assure you, we do this somewhat regularly in Karen Pryor Academy and we get away with it. Let's do a little observation game and here are your instructions. I'm going to play this YouTube movie that simply flashes a series of numbers on the screen. And all I want you to do at home on mute is click whenever you see an even number. Click for even numbers. You don't have to feed. I don't need treats and your computer doesn't. Click for even numbers. All right, I'm going to give everyone 2 more seconds to grab their clicker. And if you're using a verbal marker, no big deal. Just yes, 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 whenever you see an even number. Here we go. All right, hope you had some fun doing that. If you misclicked and you laughed at yourself, that's okay. Misclicks are going to happen. But these are the sorts of like games professional trainers play to sharpen up the reflexes of see a behavior and then compute with your brain, it's 8, and then hit the clicker button. And yeah, if it's embarrassing, that's okay. I do this to all my students all the time, and everyone ends up laughing at how bad we are at clicker training. But it's a great game. And yes, Callista, I'm sorry that your dog got upset. Like, what? You're clicking and not feeding me? They'll live. It was just like maybe 10 clicks. All right, so now that we've gone through see, mark, and reinforce, right? So pay attention, like the whack-a-mole game. Mark with good timing. And well, we can't feed the computer, so we didn't practice reinforcement. Let's talk about blah, 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 or learned irrelevance. And I have a video to share. And did you notice the shirt that I'm wearing tonight? If you don't know, I'm a very big beagle fancier. I'm into beagle rescue. All beagles. It's all about beagles. So naturally, I would use a video of a beagle to illustrate a point. And I'm going to go ahead and play it and then ask some questions about it. I'll play it a couple times, but let's watch because it's cute beagle.
Oliver, sit. Oliver, sit. Sit. Sit, Oliver, please, sit. Oliver, sit. Oliver, sit. Sit, Oliver, sit. Sit. Come on, you know this. Sit. Oliver.
All right, so what was the cue that this person was trying to issue to this dog? What was the cue? I mean, sit, obviously. Yep, Tracy, Andy, you got it. Sit, sit. Oliver, please sit, please. Next question. A behavior did get elicited. So sit did produce a behavior. What was the behavior that got produced? What did the dog do? A woo, bark, bark, howl, yeah, vocalize, bay, the beagle bay, barking. So Oliver clearly thinks that sit means bark, which is problematic. And at the end of the video, it was very brief, but did you see the moment that Oliver basically left the movie? I'm going to play it again. It's fun to watch, and I like beagles.
Oliver, sit. Oliver, sit. Sit. Sit, Oliver, please, sit. Oliver, sit. Oliver, sit. Sit, Oliver, sit. Sit. Come on, you know this, sit. Oliver.
He's bye-bye. Yeah, he went to go sniff. Bye-bye. Carolina says he shows discomfort. Yeah, possibly sniffing is a displacement behavior. Yeah, that's right, Emily, sniffing. And that in situations where dogs feel like there's pressure being put on them, they often start sniffing the ground as a way to like calm themselves down and also communicate like, hey, chill out, dude. Like you're basically starting to put a lot of pressure on me. Like starting to almost shout. I mean, not in a mean way, but like over and over and over again. That's a lot of pressure. So that is the sort of training, not to throw shade on Oliver's owner, but that's the sort of training that basically looks like that movie that dogs walk out on, and also cause that little bit of anxiety and pressure because like, oh no, he's going to ask me for something and I have no idea what he wants. And it's that awkward sort of like, I don't like interacting with you this way, Dad. This is no fun. And yes, sniffing is what he needed. That's right, Alexis. So we really don't want to do that. So the problem with this is most people issue cues too early in the training process. So I wouldn't actually be saying SIT with a dog like Oliver unless I wanted to make a viral video. If I really wanted to train a good SIT, I wouldn't start by cueing at all. The first step,
sit.
The first step is to actually capture behavior first. So see the behavior being offered, mark it and reinforce it, no cues. So in this little video with me and T-Bone back when it was warm outside, you will see me mark and feed, yes and feed. Every time he offers me the behavior of look at my face, so he gives me eye contact or like looks at me, but I'm not cueing. I'm just going to mark and reinforce. So I'm just going to play this to take a look at a capturing session.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Good boy, T-Bone. You're a good boy. That's probably enough.
So that's a little clip I did of T-Bone being captured for eye contact, where I've got that very still body, right? Super still. I watch closely, and if he sits and looks, that still meets criteria, yes. And then I feed. If he stands and looks, yes, and feed. So for him, it's a very clear picture that, oh, there's only one criteria this guy's looking for right now in this session. He wants me to look at him, no confusion. And I also reinforce him in a way that gets him looking away. So I feed on the floor so that he can then tilt his head back up. So that's an example of a capturing session of eye contact, no cues. So Oliver's owners would be well served to just say, all right, sit clearly doesn't work. I need to stop saying anything, quiet mouth, and just get him to offer me a sit. I'm going to mark and feed it so that that starts being thrown at me in the way that T-Bone here was throwing a lot of attention to me. All right. I don't know about you, but whenever I see training videos on Clicker Expo or other sort of Clicker Expo Live was just this weekend, and I see some really cool training or any webinars that I pay for that I see really cool training, I often get very excited about training because it's like, oh my God, now that I've seen that, I want to go do it. So here's our first scheduled break. You can either run off with your dog and actually do a 5-minute training session, or you can ask questions now and I'll answer them in the chat, or you could just go take a break. Suggestions for that 5-minute training session: do a capture session. No cues, simply see a behavior your dog offers. Maybe it's the first one, mark it, and then reinforce, and then just do it over and over again like I did. So whatever your dog throws at you, maybe you get your treats out clicker and your dog throws a sit, do a 5-minute session where you capture sits. Maybe your dog offers a down, capture that, whatever your dog throws. So go do that. And let's answer some questions if you choose to stick around. So Chantal asks, how long should training sessions be for puppies? So you can train for, I mean, it depends on the puppy, but I like doing sessions that are about the length with that T-bone video. It was about a minute and a minute 20. And then I was like, good boy, have a break, gave him some treats. And then I could let him go sniff and walk around. And then guess what? In about 2 minutes, I could do another round. So it's almost like doing interval training at the gym where you work hard for a minute and then you take a break and then you come back, you work hard for a minute, take a break. That's how I like assembling, because who has time to just train for a minute? I want to get like 15 minutes of training if I've taken the time to take my dog out and do all that stuff. So that's my view to it. And ultimately, if your dog leaves the movie, then you know, wait a minute, I can't make a movie that's 4 hours and people will stick around for it. I stayed around for my dad's sake. I watched Avatar 2 and I can't believe it was 3 hours and 20 minutes. I stuck through the whole thing, but I was like, surely there's going to be an intermission. What the heck's going on? So if you want to, if your dog walks away from your training session, it's too long. Next question. If the handler is anxious or shy or too soft, does this energy translate over to the dog so they don't want to train? I cannot test or assess whether dogs are psychic. So therefore, if I can't measure that or test for it, I don't believe it to be true.
One related thing, Andre, we actually had Lauren Sau do a presentation for us a couple months ago, specifically about human anxiety and whether it can transfer to dogs. And there's some research, basically to this point, we don't have any evidence that it exists, but I'll drop the link in the chat if people want to check it out, because it's a common claim that people say like, oh, you need to be more confident or less nervous about it. But there's some pretty cool stuff in there. So I'll drop the link in the chat.
Interesting. Okay. But I do believe that cueing can be unclear. So and we're going to get into cueing and communication, like asking for the sit, cueing the behaviors. I definitely think people can be unclear. And if a person who labels themselves as anxious or shy or too soft is unclear with their cueing, then maybe we can attribute it to that. I don't know, speculating. Other questions. I have a hard time juggling clicker and treats and often a leash. I've seen the finger mount clickers. I haven't been able to find one in retail. Is there a clicker that is more ergonomic that helps? Yeah, my favorite clicker to date is still the Karen Pryor iClick, which is sold also on Amazon with knockoff branding. It has a raised button. It's very small. And I find that I can hold a leash and put the clicker on top, but your mileage may vary. I've never used the clicker ring myself. I'm kind of cheap. So and in fact, I use box clickers. I'm so cheap and old fashioned, but I'm hesitant to pay $20 for a product where $1 one will do. So that's my view. And I think the iClick is about $2, and I think it still can't be beat. Kelly asks, shark mouth dogs, grabbing the treats, overexcited. Big topic, shortcut, just treat on the floor for now, and then seek some guidance regarding how to teach soft mouth. I'm going to answer a couple more. Peter asks, what percentage of dogs can you reliably get off leash with no pressure? I see balance trainers walk off leash, but seldom see positive only dogs off leash. Well, we don't really teach people to walk their dogs off leash in Toronto because there's a leash law. But I would suggest that if you are good at training, actually, let me take that back. We don't walk dogs off leash in the city because it is illegal, but every single one of us take our dogs off leash on hikes, and we don't use aversives. And I'm gonna take one more question and then we're gonna get back at it. Carrie asks, my dog is shaky when I'm taking off clothes and harness, also shaky. That's beyond scope. That was one of the ground rules that fear, anxiety, or aggression issues are definitely, well, my camera just got fuzzy, are out of scope for this presentation for today. It's not that I don't want to answer, it's just that it's just way too big a topic for the scope of today's presentation. So I'd encourage Carrie to look at other resources to get help with that. And maybe some of them might be available on Every Dog Austin as well, about anxious dogs or dogs that shake around elevators and stuff. Okay, break time is over. If you went off and played with your dog, come back. I'm going to take the spotlight off myself. This time I'm going to remember to do that, and I'm going to proceed with sharing the screen. So let's talk about cue types. So we know how to see, we know how to mark, we know how to reinforce and get offered behavior where the dog's like, yeah, I get it. We're doing this eye contact thing. We're doing this sit thing. Now we think about cues. And obviously the cues have to be perceivable, right? Like if your dog can't perceive it, it's not a cue, and we're limited by the 5 senses. Touch, hearing, smell, sight, and taste. And technically all could be cues, but only some are practical from a training perspective. Verbal cues, sit. That's accessible because I got a mouth. Visual cues, like the classic is typically like a hand going swoop like that. That's a classic sort of sit cue for most dogs. Whoop. And tactile, like if you ever like put your hand on your dog's leg like this, or like near their paw, they often give you a shake of paw. So that's an example of a tactile cue. Visual cues are orange and circled because they are the easiest for your dogs to perceive, the most salient, for a variety of reasons. And what I want to talk about, though, is when you teach cues to avoid this problem. No, it's not about avoiding The Last of Us, because it is a great game and a great TV series. I cried really hard when I watched episode 3. Did anyone watch episode 3 recently? And if you did, write in the chat that was really touching. But anyways, that's a tangent. What flashlights are salient. Flashlights are salient because in the dark, wow, they're bright. You can't miss them. But as soon as flashlights are out in daylight or in a well-lit room, you can't even notice they're on. And I use this analogy to tell you that overshadowing in stimuli causes dogs to not understand cues. So if you do this, so look at me because I'm going to do the camera thing in the corner. If you were to do Oliver, sit, Oliver, sit, 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 and that's how you're training. It's like, look, Oliver's learning. He's sitting, he's sitting. I assure you, Oliver does not notice the sit verbal flashlight because it's overshadowed by the sun. The sun is my hand. It's just way more salient. So the training that is occurring is the hand is all they see. So as soon as I take this hand away and just say sit, it no longer is the same cue. Most likely, if I said nothing and just lifted my hand up without saying sit, Oliver would understand because this was the most salient thing in the cue, in the teaching of that cue for that behavior. So when teaching behaviors, it's my opinion, it's better to do single stimuli at a time so that the dog really gets to hear the cues. If I stop moving and I'm quiet for a bit, sit. That sound is salient because it comes from a stimulus void. And that's how Oliver would learn to actually understand what that cue meant. So going back to this video, I'm going to show the second half of little Oliver because there is a listen and he eventually sits. So just pay attention and just keep an eye on what the actual cue is. It appears fast.
Sit, Oliver, sit. Sit. Come on. You know this. Sit. Oliver. Pay attention. Sit. Good boy. Now stay, stay, stay.
It was a little tricky to see, but I am curious. Did anyone catch it? If you saw what the actual cue was, type it in the chat. I'm gonna, yeah, we got some. All right, good. So yeah, the hand flicked in the corner of the camera. He was holding the camera himself. So ultimately, Oliver really knows sit on a hand signal, and this is the verbal sit cue means howl at you because I'm frustrated, and that's what he ends up training. So salience of cues is really important.
Sit, Oliver.
So to sort of demonstrate like really clean training, I'll use a gold standard. This is Caitlin and Maverick Caitlin and Maverick were a handler team from one of my 2021 graduating classes from Karen Pryor Academy. And in it, what you will see is Caitlin is going to cue Maverick to do 10 behaviors in sequence. And I just want you to look at and listen for what is the cue? What is the cue? And you will see a very still body and a stimulus void. And it's either going to be verbal, it's going to be visual, super clear to the dog. So let's watch some clean training and have fun with it.
Now we're gonna start it.
Yep.
Sit. Pretty. Speak. Spin. Nose. Sit.
So Caitlin had a variety of different types of cue types. She made a whistle, which is, a auditory cue. She had a number of verbal cues, but her body was very still when she gave those cues. She used her legs to illustrate leg weave. Some of the cues were objects, like the presentation of the hoop and the presentation of her arm for sit pretty. But very good trainers are very conscious about what their cues are. And for Caitlin and all my students in Karen Pryor Academy, they have to submit to me on paper a clear and precise description of what each cue is. It is verbal, it is sit. It is a hand signal. It looks like this. My hand looks like this. It's my right hand, my left hand. Leg weave, my right leg steps out at that angle, and so on and so forth. So it's really important that if you have a dog that doesn't listen as well as you'd like them to really become conscious about what are your cues and what are your cue types. And I'd like to just give a very simple infogram of like how to think about things. So on the left is, all right, I got T-Bone. T-Bone is looking at me like crazy. We've got really clean training. He looks at me, I mark, I feed, he eats, he comes back and looks at me. We got the loopy training going. So at that point, I'm going to start inserting the cue, and I would just simply say T-Bone. I want it to be his cue. He looks up at me, mark, reinforce, repeat. And that is like step one in adding a cue to a behavior that you have being offered at you at a high rate. Now, what if you do a training session where you give the cue T-Bone and nothing happens, or Oliver, for example, sit and nothing happens? What I would recommend is go, oh, okay, I'm just going to stand there and be still, let the dog figure it out for a bit, but no, it's not looking good. Nothing happens. I wouldn't say it again, that's for sure, because that's a great way to turn a cue into learned irrelevance or blah, 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 blah. I'm going to go, buddy, all done. I might even give him a couple of free bonus treats. It's on me because I screwed up. And then I'm going to abort for a bit. And then I'm going to come back and go back to the capturing step. No cues, see, mark, and reinforce to get that rate of reinforcement where they're just throwing that behavior at me over and over again, back up, and then go back to the box on the left. So again, if you like seeing training, and now you've seen Caitlin do some really cool cueing, and you've thought about cue types, if you did some work with your dog, why don't you think about the behavior that you got? Let's say your dog threw a bunch of sits at you, and you just want to sharpen up your dog's responsiveness to that cue and reinsert it again. Go ahead. Stand still, keep your body still, and if you want to make it verbal, then you're like a stimulus void, perfectly still. Sit. Yes, and then feed, and then repeat that so that the word sit literally comes out of like a black hole, the only stimulus. That's how you cleanly insert that cue. And then, or if it was down, maybe your dog threw down at you or spin or whatever. So go ahead and play with your dog for 5 minutes. In the meantime, this will give us an opportunity to break for some questions in the chat. So yeah, it's 7:44 now. So I am going to take a look and see if any questions were asked, or if you want to type any questions in the chat. I'm gonna scroll back a bit. Yes, I agree. This goes back to my tangent. Sarah Campbell says, yes, Last of Us is so nice after the dragging of Walking Dead. I gave up on that quite a long time ago. Carolina asks, what do you think about training a dog a visual cue and a verbal cue for the same behavior? I think is the word you're wanting for. It's a good thing. 100%. So I want my dogs to be multilingual for a variety of reasons. So I would do one session where, all right, I just want to clean up Oliver's sit cue, and I want to make sure that if I've got a Starbucks and a TV remote, sit works. So I'll keep my body still and do sessions where it's sit. And then maybe the next day or even later in that day, it's like, I also want him to learn how to respond to visual cues as well, because he might lose his hearing one day. All my beagles lose their hearing. They make themselves deaf. So I would do the exact same session later that day where my hands are still, he's there, and I just do this thing, the hand motion or whatever. And then he does it. Yes. And then I feed. And then I have a dog that is able to, I can elicit either a sit on a verbal cue or a visual cue. And because I didn't overlap it at the same time, sit, then I know that my verbal cue is being perceived like that flashlight in the dark. Emily asks the next question, which is kind of cool. What if your dog switches to offering something else during capturing sessions? Still within scope, a little bit nerdy, but that's cool. So technically, if your objective is to just capture sit for the purposes of getting it at a rate of reinforcement, or you want to then add a cue to it, for example, I would selectively not reinforce for anything other than that sit. That's my opinion, because I want to get one behavior offered really cleanly so that in the next session I can add the cue. Later, when I have multiple behaviors, so I've done cue, I've assigned cues to sit, I've assigned cues to down, I've assigned cues to stand, I've assigned cues to spin, all the things. Then what I might do later in its own type of session is do a cueing session where I test for comprehension, where I will give a sit cue, yes, treat for correct response, down cue for down, like correct response, and test to see is my dog actually discriminating between multiple cues. But in the context of a capturing session, one criteria only, one behavior at a time. Andy asks, advice for dogs that don't respond well to luring. This is Andy and Boobert. I'm trying to get him to work to follow the treat in my hand and give it to him before he gives up, but this can make requiring luring rather difficult. He was taught to not follow treats before we got him. So a couple of things. You can teach a dog that was taught not to follow lures to follow lures, just set lower criteria. So if you put a treat on his nose and you move it 1 inch and he moves 1 inch, yes, and feed him. If it's half an inch, yes, and feed him, and then build up from there so that you can have a dog that you can move like many feet around. Luring is a valid training method for teaching behavior, but some dogs actually have to be taught how to even follow a lure. That's almost like teaching someone how to go to school as opposed to the subjects in school. Carrie comments, eye contact when we say dog's name versus when we say watch me. Should we train for both? Carrie, that's up to you. Dogs can have multiple cues for the same behavior. I'm lazy, and I prefer just teaching them their name because, well, why? I don't know, because if you teach watch me, then watch me just becomes their name. Like, what's your dog? Hey dog, what's your name? My name is Watch Me. Like, that's a play on the joke of what's your name? Bad dog. So why not call them, that's my preference, but it's up to you. Ritwick asks, hey Ritwick, he's a student of ours in Toronto. Once a dog knows the behavior, say 80% of the time, do we switch to intermittent rewards and gradual? What are your thoughts on intermittent treating? So intermittent or variable treating, reinforcement. And older school me says, yes, I love intermittent or variable reinforcement. I think that it's going to happen anyways in real life because you're just not always going to be able to give food. So it's going to occur naturally. I also think if you maintain high standards for your dog, meaning, you're pretty good at sit, and that took 5 seconds for you to respond to that. No. That's going to naturally build in anyways. So I don't feel increasingly, I don't feel it's necessary to deliberately not reinforce because it just happens naturally in the messiness of real life. That's my opinion. Kelly asks about a dog that ignored verbal cues, switching to hand signal, and then she did everything to ask. She was turning deaf. Yes, 100%. So so dogs lose their hearing just like people over time. And it's great to teach two cues or two cue types, verbal and visual. And in fact, that's how dogs that are, dogs that are deaf learn visual cues. Dogs that are blind can learn verbal cues. Dogs that are deafblind can learn tactile cues. There's a couple of deafblind dogs I've seen on TikTok that are taught with, physical stimulation, like being touched this way becomes a cue, or even like banging the floor creates vibrations. That's a tactile cue for a dog to recall that is deafblind. Excellent. We're right on time. That was 5 minutes of questions. That's perfect. So we're winding down the content for today too. So we're getting to the finishers. So once your dog responds to a cue like sit, let's say it's the verbal cue sit, and they're doing it pretty good, then you have to actually then apply green eggs and ham or generalization. And Dr. Seuss's book is great because literally there's your generalization plan. It's Dr. Seuss. Can you do it in our house? Can you do it with a mouse in a box, with a fox in a car, here or there, on a train, with a goat on a boat? And that might also mean varying your position. So I've been standing up while cueing sit. Can I give you a verbal cue while I'm sitting in a chair giving sit? These are all the things that are really important so that the behaviors are fluent under many different conditions. And this is probably the biggest reason why I want people to get in the habit of packing treats when they take their dog outside, because if your dog only does training in your living room and at the dog training school, then these are the only places that these behaviors become fluent. Your dogs aren't dumb. They know this is the school and home are the only place where food reinforcement is available. So why would I ever have the motivation to respond to these cues in public, like over here? So bring food with you, because I do feel like generalizing, one, gets you behaviors useful in the real world. Two, it's a good habit. And three, it makes you look good because your dog looks smart in public. And I think that that's pretty important for us. Dogs don't care as much. Summarizing the 5 things I talked about today. Let's make sure that our dogs are sufficiently motivated for behavior. We refrain from using unnecessary pressure that can make dogs like choke because of like that pressure of that math that I gave my team member, in a meeting. Whoops. And let's make sure we take care of their wellness, that nothing wrong with them is affecting their ability to respond, like deafness, for example. Number 2, see, mark, and reinforce is the holy trinity of clean training. And 3, capture behavior first, get it being offered at you before you then, number 4, start adding cues, but add clear cues in a stimulus void so your dog really perceives them. Like absolute silence. Down. That's how you give a cue when it is being taught. And then generalize it so that you are sitting on the sofa holding a phone like this and you go down. And the dog goes, the phone is not relevant. Him sitting in this relaxed position is not relevant. It's that sound stimulus that's relevant. That's the process of generalization. Everyone, thank you very, very much for being such a wonderful audience and participating in the chat so well. At this point in time, I do want to actually remind everyone that Every Dog Austin is a wonderful organization that provides financial support to people that need it in their area so that they can get access to this great training. And I was so pleased to be invited as part of the speaker series that gives people of color and minorities and BIPOC folk that aren't normally represented as dominantly in dog training to speak. And I also wanted to give back to their organization. So I donated back my speaker fees to Every Dog Austin. So if you found my talk reinforcing and interesting and you enjoyed it, and you want to support Miranda and her organization so that more of these get to put on, Miranda, how can they give you a donation, your organization, a donation right now?
Yeah, people can go to everydogaustin.org/donate, or if you just go to everydogaustin.org, you'll see it on there. We're also on Venmo at Every Dog Austin. If you're not sure which one it is, it's just the one that says Every Dog Austin. Yeah, thank you so much for that. As Andre said, we have a whole bunch of other cool speakers coming, and because of Andre's donation, we are able to have another speaker on our roster for this year, which is really exciting. This has been really, really fun to be able to get to have different voices and different speakers on a variety of topics. Our next one is coming up in about 2 weeks. Xenia Jones is going to be talking about using Look at That from Control Unleashed, specifically for things like dogs who want to chase squirrels and other fun stuff like that. So we've got a bunch of other webinars. Definitely check them out. I will shoot out an email tomorrow with the recording for the presentation, so everybody will have that, and it'll also have the link to donate and the link to check out future webinars that are upcoming. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. If you're looking for training, we do offer some things virtually, or we can help you find somebody in your local area. If you're local to Austin, we do have classes and private training available and all kinds of other things. And as Andre mentioned, we offer financial assistance on all of our programs. All of our webinars are free, lots of fun stuff coming up. This is our first one for 2023. So a huge thank you to Andre for being a great kickoff to our series this year. Anything else you want to say, Andre, before we kick off for the night?
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to just tell everyone about what I'm trying to work on. I want to have 1 million followers on TikTok. It's a totally ridiculous goal. I'll never attain it, but you should try. So make sure to follow me on social media. And as I said, it's Andre_U. That's for me personally. And my business is When Hounds Fly. You can follow both.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We look forward to seeing you on TikTok. We're kind of on TikTok. We're not really on TikTok, but we'll follow you. And thank you so much for being out here tonight. We really appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.